there's a great big buck, he says, about 30, 40 yards right in front of us in that sorghum field, standing and looking right at us.
Now from the King of Bucks television, it's Tales of the King, amazing stories from hunters just like you. Mike Okray is a serious hunter. If you have any doubts, take a short walk through his rural Wisconsin home.
I've had the opportunity to hunt a lot of places, all over Europe, up as far north as the Arctic Circle for muskox, and down as far south as Argentina for birds and for red stag, and Australia for the kangaroos and for the water buffaloes, and made a few trips, 4 or 5 trips over to Africa. It's been a great time, great adventure for me to be able to hunt so much.
Though he has traveled worldwide, Okray still holds a deep respect for one of his first passions, hunting trophy whitetail.
Because the whitetail is so accessible for so many hunters here in North America. There's so many of them, and they don't grow on trees. The big ones don't grow on trees anymore because so many people know where they are. I think it's probably one of the hardest animals, if not the hardest animal, to get in North America, the real trophy whitetail.
The open country of eastern Colorado was not the place you'd expect to find big whitetail. This was mule deer country. The real trophy whitetails were a Kansas commodity located far to the east. But in the early 90s, that began to change.
There were a lot of whitetails that were coming up through the creeks and the rivers out of Kansas and migrating and kind of taking over where the big mule deers were, and they were coming up there mainly because of the sorghum fields. But I had a good friend who also was a guide, Greg Pink, out of Colorado, and he felt that we'd have a real good chance in the leases that he had. We were hunting just about 20 miles or so west of a little town called Lamar in the southeast part of Colorado, which, at that time back in the 90s was not really known for big whitetails, but the food was there and there wasn't a lot of hunting pressure. It's kind of been in a very remote part of the state. So, these whitetails had a chance to become more mature, to get the 4, 5, 6-year-old whitetails that, guys are looking for. And Greg had a plan for the next day. He said, Mike, he said, I think a lot of those bucks, there's no place else for them to go. They're laying down in that sorghum field, and then they just lay in there. They know they're safe. Nobody can see them from the roads or any place. He said, I think that we'll go early in the morning, and I'm going to make a little drive for you. He said, I'll put you on one end of this 200-acre sorghum field, and I'll get down on the other end, and I'll start zigzagging, and maybe we can drive one out. There were trails through those sorghum fields going to these little wooded areas.
What was waiting in the sorghum would exceed their wildest expectations. But the drive didn't go as originally planned.
So I'm standing there and getting ready, and about a half hour goes by and I see him standing there, and all of a sudden he starts waving his hand, and of course I saw it, and I said to myself, yeah, I see it, go ahead, and then pretty quick he waves it a little bit more violently. And yeah, I see it, go ahead, start walking. Well, then he takes his hat off and he starts waving it frantically back and forth like I should come towards him. I thought, geez, now I got to come towards him. I thought he was coming towards me. I thought, did we get this goofed up? I'm supposed to drive towards him? And I get there, he says, Mike, he says, there's a great big buck, he says, about 30, 40 yards right in front of us in that sorghum field, standing and looking right at us. And I thought he was watching it. He said he watched you the whole time you came over here. But I says, well, what do you think he'll score, Greg? He said, I have no idea. He's going to be a big one. Greg says, no, just trust me. He said, this is a big buck. He said, just stand up and shoot him. He's right out in front of you. So I put the crosshairs where I could see just a patch of ground hair to the right of the head, and I pulled the trigger, and as I'm putting the gun down and putting another shell in, Greg says, you shot right over the top of him. He says, about 6 inches low. And I pull the trigger, and the brown spot just dropped. And Greg starts yelling and jumping, and I said, you got him, you got him. And when I was holding the gun up in the air and taking the shell out, Greg was there already at the deer, and he's, holy frights. And I said, well, what's it like? Greg turned to me and he said, Mike, I think you just shot the new state record for Colorado non-typical. He says, I've seen a lot of bucks. He said, there's nothing bigger than this.
Okray's friend Greg Pink was right. There was nothing bigger from the state of Colorado. Wildly non-typical with enormous drop tines, the rack had 36 scoreable points, earning it a Boone and Crockett score of 268 1/8. It was a huge animal with a live weight of over 318 pounds. Okray mounted the body with a replica of the rack. It holds a special place among the trophies of his other adventures. And the original rack, the Colorado State record, is part of the King of Bucks collection.
I think that's really special to be able to share it with a lot of people, that they know that's the buck. And you know, how else can a lot of people see it other than in that traveling situation that they have with the bucks and over at Springfield itself. So I'm hoping someday I'm going to go down there on one of my hunts. Maybe I'll go down to Missouri for a turkey hunt and stop in and take a look at it. It's one thing if you shoot something that makes the record book, that's exciting enough. And when it gets to be a state record, especially in Colorado where you know, was not known for whitetails, that becomes even more special because it wasn't meant to be there.
Michael's Colorado Monster has a final score of 258 2/8 and ranks as Colorado's #1 non-typical whitetail, an incredible deer worthy of the King of Bucks collection.